Chris Palmer, Jeff Lerg, episode 7 of the Dialed and Driven Hockey Mentality podcast. Today, like all the other days, we're going to talk about things that are actionable and usable right now. And I think there's nothing better and more timeless than managing the pressure, dealing the pressure, performing under pressure. Jeff works with goalies at all different levels. He's trained goalie coaches. He's trained goalies. He's had experience with guys who are 8 years old in house leagues, working all the way up to the pros. And all of that experience he's going to bring to you. And this is the stuff he works on every day. On my side, as a mental performance coach, I work with young kids all the way up to guys in the NHL, all the way into pro and amateur in Europe, trying to make sure that we help them get what they want on their way to their big dream. So today, on this managing the pressure thing, I think nothing is more overwhelming to people than dealing with this thought we have that, oh my gosh, I've got to win. Oh my gosh, I've got to do well. Jeff, tell us anything you know from people you've worked with, experiences you've had. What can we give listeners to help them see something usable right now about managing pressure?
And pressure is something that's consistent in all sports. It can have an ebb and flow during the course of the season. If it's a rival game and you're playing and you're kind of really want to win that one, so you might put some more pressure on yourself. It could be as a goaltender in the final minute of a game, your team's up by a goal, you're on the penalty kill, you're getting screened, there's tips, there's rebounds, you're just trying to find a way to make more saves before that clock expires. The higher levels, as you are climbing the ranks in the more competitive landscape where there's a point system for standings and standings start to dictate a playoff spot or not a playoff spot. Could be this position where every weekend feels so big because we need 2 points in this Friday night and then we got to at least get a tie or a split on the Saturday. So a lot of different elements to it. It's not always just a consistent one-time thing, but it is something that can be applied to all sports and all athletes.
I got to tell you, it's the hardest when you jump levels. It's so hard when you go from being a guy who's maybe not getting a lot of ice time to being a guy who's getting minutes. And all of a sudden now you're here, or you're on power play, or maybe you're the backup goalie, now you're the main guy. Anytime you jump these levels, if you go from a house league into tier 2, you go into tier 2 to tier 1, every single person I've ever worked with, when you make this jump, it just feels big, it feels giant, and you can't help but feel a little suffocated by what's going on. Or you can look at it differently. Well, you told me before, you looked at pressure. You looked at it as something completely different. You never looked at it as a negative. How do you look at pressure?
My coaches at some point along the way, and I think it's more of a hockey phrasing, not sure how relevant it is in other sports, but pressure is a privilege. That became a phrase that was dictated by the leadership and the teams I was on, and it made you really understand that it did take the pressure off. It kind of got your brain wrapped around of, hey, this is, not everyone gets to go in this opportunity. Not everyone gets to play in the NCAA tournament, do or die, with only 8 teams left, or a playoff series and you're in game 7. It's a privilege to be in this position. So as you start to change your mindset on it, I know for me that allowed me to just kind of refocus myself on the small tasks and the small goals that I accomplished in order to get there. I knew that I did all the hard work for it and I was prepared for those moments. And I was known as a goaltender for someone who really elevated their game in pressure situations. And I was proud of that because I physically wasn't obviously the most intimidating goaltender at 5'5.5". But I had my MO as I was a big time player when the games mattered. And I took pride in that. And I think I got to that point because I just had this consistent and authentic work ethic that was self-driven.
You bring up this great point, and it's so great to hear this. You told me a practical story about how you looked at pressure. But you know from your practice, you know from goalie mentors, you know from all the stuff you've done helping all these people over the years, pressure is a killer. Pressure suffocates people. Pressure makes people fall apart. And unless they find some way to get past it, they can't do anything. One of the first things I do when I work with people is to take the pressure off. I don't know how many times I've seen somebody who's just paralyzed. Sometimes it's a young kid in tears because he doesn't want to disappoint his parents. Sometimes it's somebody who's got this great opportunity to go up to D1 or an opportunity to go play in the A or go play in the NHL. And whatever this jump is, they're like, oh crap, am I actually good enough? Can I do this? And they feel this pressure. Oh my God, what am I going to do? There's people who say they don't want to look bad to their friends. They don't look bad to the people who are going to be on this team. I understand this pressure. The first thing I do as I pull the pressure off. I actually say, you can take your ball and go home. It's one of the first things. You can take your ball and go home. You can quit right now. You don't have to do this. And it freaks parents out a little bit. I actually warn them, because if I tell the kid, and I mean kids who are in the NHL even, if I tell a kid that you don't have to do this, this is your choice, all the pressure comes off. And an amazing thing happens, because once I pull all that crap away, then somebody can actually decide what they want. And in every single case, Jeff, if I tell somebody they can take their ball and go home and they actually believe it, they always find their love for that sport again. I've never had somebody who decided to quit after I told them they could quit. It's amazing. But it's that changing how you look at things. Tell me anything else. You work with young guys, you work with old guys, you've trained coaches. What do you see out there that is maybe some other way that people have done with pressure? Any stories you have, other things that have happened with people managing pressure?
Well, what I've learned is it's not always the perfect scenario that you're going to be thrown into for when you have to be prepared to handle the pressure. So many people think, hey, it's the playoffs, it's a do or die game. Of course, that's a logical time when there's pressure to it, or you could think there's pressure. I know one of my former teammates, when we were in our professional ranks, he was going on a tryout with a European team. And the second he landed, he was being evaluated for this tryout. And when you fly to Europe, you'll leave in the evening time here. You'll land in the morning. And he had a game that night. So he had just gotten off the plane, had to land, get set up to the rink, meet the team, meet the coaches. And after an overnight flight from the U.S. to Europe, he was being evaluated on game one, and by a handful of days later, he was being notified that he was not going to continue his tryout. So it's an unpredictable at times scenario, but what I found is the more prepared you are by doing all the hard work on a consistent basis, the more confident you'll be when any situation is thrown your way.
This goes back to this thing we talked about before, Steph Curry not being the biggest and baddest, but becoming the biggest and baddest because he's a guy who does 500 shots a day. This being prepared. He can sit and be worried about the pressure, but what does he do? He goes and busts his ass. He does the work. He becomes so practiced at it that it becomes second nature. But he also does something else that's really, really cool. He tries to reframe pressure as no pressure by just making it a practice, making it a game, making it fun. There are guys who actually come in to see Steph Curry sometimes an hour and a half before a game just to see some of the goofy stuff he does. He'll take half-court shots before a game. He'll actually take shots from the tunnel, just goofing around, just stuff just to be loose and not to make it anything. And by the same token, he just realizes how good he is. He can do anything. And it's amazing, just reframing pressure changes everything. So another guy, Jordan says, never look at it as a championship. Never look at it as a big game. Never look at it those things. Look at it as an opportunity. Look at it as something different. These guys reframing things is everything for them. So practicing is one way to get past pressure. Reframing how you look at it is another thing. One last thing I'd like to tell you about, there's an archery guy I work with, and I worked with him for a while, and he always used to feel while he's doing this, you can imagine with archery how you have to be so calm. You have to measure your breaths because even the exhale, you can just move just a millimeter and it changes your shot. When he did this stuff, he used to have all this stuff in his head, and we started talking about how he can do mindfulness, meditation, where he actually gets in a spot where he just exists. And before we get all freaked out about mindfulness and meditation, which, by the way, everybody does. Nobody wants to do this stuff. All it is being fully aware of this moment, being right here in this moment and feeling your breath, feeling everything, feeling the pressure on your hands, feeling the pressure on this table, feeling the pressure of my back against the chair. There's evidence, and a lot of evidence in sports psychology, that if you can find a way to practice mindfulness, practice just simple meditation, even 5 minutes a day, it adds to your sense of calm, and it goes beyond that moment and actually transfers onto the game field, onto the ice, whatever it is. It's fascinating.
You jog my memory of probably the most pressure-filled situation I've been in as an athlete and a goaltender was when I didn't feel overly prepared for the situation. And as I mentioned before, I played for the Toledo Walleye, that Detroit Red Wings AA affiliate team. I played for them into my late 20s, early 30s. And I was kind of chasing my professional path through the minor leagues. I came back to this team about halfway through the year, knowing that they already had a couple goalies in place, but I wanted to just come back close to home and be part of the team I had previously been a part of. So there's a period of time when I knew I was going to be kind of the third string goalie and wouldn't get the playing time to finish the back half of the season. I came home around Christmas time and wanted to just finish the year close to home. So there's a period of time when I was bumped down to the third string position. Both goalies were healthy. So I wasn't even allowed to practice with the team. The Detroit Red Wings affiliated goalies, they wanted them to get all the reps. So I was a guy that had to go out before the practice, watch them practice for a half hour, and then go back out after practice and just to kind of stay sharp. So as the season was winding down, I played sporadically. They did their best to try to spot me in, submit a playoff roster. They ended up giving me the position as the second string on the playoff roster because I was a good teammate. I was a veteran. I didn't have an ego at that time. I just wanted to be a part of it and support my goalie partner who was the starter, and I knew that. So I supported him throughout the whole first round of playoffs. We went to game 7 in the first round, so we had played all 6 games previously. I sat on the bench every minute. I hadn't had a start in about 4 weeks. I hadn't played any minutes in that level of play in over about 4 weeks. And after the first period, he comes up to me and said, "Hey, Lerg, you got to go in. My ankles, I tweaked my ankle." And I looked at him, I was like, oh boy. So now that's the first time I felt an immense amount of pressure because I didn't feel overly prepared. I didn't go through the whole rhythm of everything that it takes to be successful and prepared. So I go in a 0-0 game, game 7, 8,500 people in the stands. It's do or die. We're a first place team that's expected to win and expected to hopefully win a championship. For me, I felt pressure because I was not prepared in my mind. At least I didn't think. And I think to your point, maybe just found some mindfulness. I felt the puck within 30 seconds of playing. I had to make a big save. And then from there, it just got into a flowed state and won the game. And we went on to win the series. And I continued to play after that.
So it must have been unreal, though, because here you get this amazing opportunity and, pressure is a gift, right? But not in the moment. It didn't feel like a damn gift then. You're out there busting your ass, trying to make it work, trying to go from being just cold, not ready for this, not thinking you're going to play. And you said it might have been this kind of mindfulness thing, but just to dumb it down and make it a regular person language, it sounds like you just got to the point where you're just doing your job. You just focus on doing your job. Is that what eventually happened? You just got to your spot, tracking pucks, making sure you're moving. Is that what you did?
Exactly. Went back to taking the game 5 minutes at a time, going through the 3 or 4 things that I focused on to make me successful, be aggressive, rebound control, battle through traffic. And those were the elements where I made my mind go. And then, of course, the game just becomes a game. The pressure was relieved. The excitement of it kind of just starts to be a part of the equations to success. But the main focus became do your job, take care of the small goals, and elevate your team to hopefully get a win.
We didn't talk about this before. You are going out there, and you're the Jeff Lerg I know in this picture, right? You're the national championship guy. You're the guy who is the 5'5" asthmatic who somehow said, nobody's going to stop me. I'm going to bust my ass. I'm going to make things happen. But here, all of a sudden the alarms went off, didn't it? Like, do you remember that feeling of just like all of a sudden, like every bit of adrenaline's coming up and it's not that good. Some of it's like, oh my gosh. Do you think in a moment there, you were worried about screwing it up? Was there like even a flash of that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's 8,500 people in the stands. It's on TV and everyone wants us and needs us to win that game.
You could have spun out. I mean, it would have been so easy to spin out. It'd be so easy just to implode or, oh my gosh, I can't do it. And just like, it could have been a nightmare. And you've seen this happen. You've seen people who go in pressure situations and they just fold. That could have been it. But for you, you're actually saying that what you did is you got to the point where you're like, okay, look, this, maybe you feel this. And all of a sudden you just make a decision to dive in. And the only thing you have control of in that crazy big ass stadium with 8,000 plus people, coach throwing you in, 0-0, oh my gosh, how are we going to make this? You did your job. You did what you knew. You executed what you knew. That was your way out.
That was it. The only thing I knew is I did the work and just do your job.
So we're going to say some of these themes over and over again because we want to give you things that are actionable. We want parents, we want spouses, we want players, we want everybody to know in the end it's pulling the pressure off and realizing you can always take your ball and go home. It's not going to be the end of the world if you don't win the national championship. It's not going to be the end of the world if you get sent down to the A. It happens. People get sent down, they get sent back up. Things are going to happen and it's going to suck, but there's no one moment that's going to define your life in this sport. Now, you might think that it does, but that's because you've decided that's what it is. And I think it's too much pressure. I think in the end, you got to pull that stuff off and find a way to move forward. So, Jeff, you talked about before this principle of kind of being practiced to get ready. Practice to get ready. Michael Phelps has a great story. Michael Phelps used to be a guy that worried a lot. And he's a guy who found a way to get past that because he would imagine every possible scenario. This for him was visualization in sports psychology. He didn't call it that, but he'd imagine every possible situation. He would take time beyond swimming miles and miles of reps and doing all the things you do to be strong as a swimmer. This amazing multi-gold medal Olympian would think of every possible thing. He would visualize every bad thing that could happen, visualize every good thing that would happen, so that when it happened, he was just ready. And that's an incredible thing about visualization. And I know everybody I've ever talked to is like, oh God, I don't do visualization. But at the Olympic level, that's the magic trick. It's another form of preparation. So that's another piece of this puzzle. Tell us anything else, maybe in one more story you can think about to help people see how somebody got past this giant pressure cooker we have.
Well, another way I look at it, pressure in itself, is that when it is a self-imposed pressure, when you do accomplish your goal, you feel more gratification and pure excitement and joy. When it's external pressure from a coach or family member, you just start to feel relieved. So I just know from being on successful teams that were expected to win, I felt more of that external pressure because it was more of a relief if we were a top-ranked team and we won the first round in Game 7 because we were expected to do it. Whereas my experience of being more of an underdog and finding a way to be on a championship team, it was just pure excitement and joy because there wasn't the pressure to win. It was just natural, organic excitement and just the sense of accomplishment and reward.
That's awesome. So in the sports psychology side, there's this interesting thing because all of this, if we really want to kind of dumb this down and make it really, really simple, it's always your thoughts. It's always your thoughts. It's always your thoughts. And whether it's little Jeff Lerg growing up trying to think he can be somebody despite some of the medical stuff that went on and then wind up being amazing, wind up being a pro hockey player. Or if it's somebody who really wants something bad, they hit their head on something, they go up and down. All the time, it's what we think about everything. Quick example, there's a guy who's playing in D1 and man, he wanted D1 so bad, so bad. In the first year, sometimes you just don't get the opportunity you want to have. And it was really, really hard for him. And one of the things we did was we looked at the thoughts, and the thoughts were, oh my gosh, I'm not doing what I could do. Oh my gosh, I'm not getting the playing time. And it's so easy to think about all that and get so frustrated. Or you can go back and put yourself outside of that and go, hey, before you were here, you wanted this so bad. You wanted so badly to be one of the top 450 people in the world who get a shot at D1 every year, roughly 450 spaces. And when you look at that, all of a sudden you reframe your thoughts. You go from thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, to, wow, what an opportunity, what a gift. Here's a chance to do what I can do. So this reframing is a big thing. And in sports psychology, even into regular psychology, there's something called cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the reasons why it's such a successful therapy is it forces you to think about your thoughts and challenge your thoughts. And one of the simplest challenges is when you feel pressure, ask yourself, simple thing, is it really pressure? The answer every time is no. You know what pressure is? My old coach in high school, you know what's pressure? Pressure is being an open heart surgeon. That's pressure, okay? And I really believe that because I think when it comes down to it, somebody's life's on the line, that's pressure. But for everything else, it's opportunity. I mean, sports is an amazing opportunity. So in terms of things that are actionable to take out, it's kind of a summary. One, how we look at things is everything. Our thoughts are everything. So parents, spouses, partners, players, goalies, looking at your thoughts, looking at how do I look at this word pressure? Is it useful? Does it make sense? That's one thing. And challenging that, I tell you, in every case, there isn't actual pressure in a bad way. Two, reframing things. Pressure, like you talked about, pressure's a gift. Looking at pressure as an opportunity, it is. The other thing is knowing you can take your ball and go home anytime. That pulls the pressure off. And parents, honestly, I know it's tempting, and coaches, I know it's tempting to say, hey, it's a must-win game. We got to do this. We got to do this. But that just loads a bunch of crap on your kid because in the end, just like Jeff said, when he was surprised to go play, when he had an opportunity to go out there, the thing that helped him was just to focus on what he knew and do his job, which is mindfulness, which gets you in a flow state. It all goes together. The practical thing is do your job, stay in the flow state, be prepared, challenge the doubt, fears, and worries. Know that your thoughts are everything. And in the end, you have a chance to go get this amazing gift in sport if you can get past the garbage. Anything else, Jeff?
And when you're an athlete and you're in this pregame situation, you start to feel those chills in your body, and that's a pure sense of excitement. And that's self-induced pressure, applied pressure, where you know in your heart you want this. And that's the best state to be in as an athlete, because it's not an external force that's making you do it. Like, you use that to elevate your game, use that emotional state, and then the trick is once that game starts, you're right back to that mentality of taking care of the small goals. It's almost like you can block out every fan in the stand or block out all the outside noise. You just refocus yourself. But I know as those chills, as you're sitting there in the tunnel waiting for your name to get called, that's a sense of excitement, and it's a privilege. So enjoy that moment, because it's not always going to be there as an athlete. That's why you want to keep staying dialed and staying driven in everything you're trying to accomplish, because there's no better feeling than setting a goal and accomplishing some success out of it. That'll wrap up our episode today. We really appreciate you guys listening. Please remember to like, comment, and share our podcast. We put a lot of time and energy into it, trying to influence the next generation of athletes. And as a reminder, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube. We'll chat with you next week.
Jeff Lerg! One of the best saves you will ever see, keeps this game alive!
Here's Palmer again, the Hockey Mentality Podcast, Dialed and Driven.